When my family screamed at me to get out of the house that I had built with my own hard-earned money, I stood there in stunned silence. My father's face was red with anger, my mother was crying dramatically, and my siblings stood behind them with disgust written all over their faces. They said I had shamed them in front of everyone. I didn't even know what they meant at first. All I had done was tell the truth at a family dinner, but apparently, the truth was enough to destroy the fake image they had spent years protecting. I grew up being told that I was a disappointment. I wasn't as charming as my brother or as beautiful as my sister. I was the quiet one, the one who worked part-time jobs, studied late at night, and rarely asked for help. My parents used to say I'd never make it far because I didn't know how to network. What they didn't know was that every insult, every rejection, was fueling something inside me. I wanted to prove them wrong. And I did. After college, I started my own small business. It wasn't much at first, a freelance marketing service that barely covered my bills, but I learned, adapted, and worked harder than anyone I knew. Slowly, it grew. Within 5 years, I was earning more than I had ever imagined. My parents didn't ask many questions about my work, but they never hesitated to accept my help. When their mortgage was due, I paid it. When my sister wanted to study abroad, I covered her tuition. When my father's business failed, I gave him enough to start over. They called me a blessing from God, but I always knew they said it only when they needed something. The night it all fell apart started innocently. We had a big family dinner at our home, well, technically my home. They had no idea that the property was in my name because I had bought it for them and let them think it was financed through my father's savings. That night, my uncle made a snide comment about me being lucky that I got to stay with my parents instead of paying rent somewhere. I laughed and said, well, it's not really luck when you're the one paying the mortgage. The room went silent. My father's fork dropped. My mother's face turned pale. My sister glared at me as if I had just betrayed the entire family. They all started yelling at once, accusing me of humiliating them, of trying to make them look poor. My father shouted that I had no respect, and that I should be ashamed for boasting about money. I stood there, trying to explain that it wasn't boasting, it was just the truth. But they didn't want to hear it. My mother screamed, "Get out. You've shamed us." My siblings joined in, their words sharp and cruel, calling me arrogant, ungrateful, and heartless. So I left. I packed my things and drove away that night. I didn't cry. I didn't shout back. I just felt empty. For years, I had carried them, paid for their comfort, their status, their image, and they had never once thanked me sincerely. Now that they knew the truth, they treated me like an outsider. The next morning, I sat in my apartment and went through every financial record I had. The house deeds, the car payments, the tuition receipts, all under my name. Every single thing they had used to maintain their pride came from my effort. I called the bank, canceled the automatic payments, and sent messages to my lawyer. Within hours, I had legally transferred ownership of the house to myself and revoked all the allowances I used to send them. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because I finally understood something: family that values money over truth doesn't deserve either. A few days later, my father called. His tone was softer, almost pleading. He said they didn't mean it, that it was just a misunderstanding. My mother cried in the background, saying they were sorry. But I had already seen the truth behind their love. It wasn't about me, it was about what I could give them. I told them calmly that I was taking a break from the family, that I needed time to think. What I didn't say was that I had already decided not to go back. Weeks passed. My sister called once, asking if I could help out with her next semester's tuition. I told her to talk to Mom and Dad. She hung up without saying goodbye. That was the moment I truly felt free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bound by guilt or obligation. I could finally live for myself. Months later, I heard from a cousin that my parents had been forced to move to a smaller house. Their friends had started asking questions, and my father was too proud to tell them what really happened. I didn't feel joy or revenge, just peace. They had their pride, and I had my freedom. The morning after I walked away from my family, I sat by the window of my apartment, staring at the city skyline. It was quiet, peaceful, and nothing like the chaos I had left behind. My phone was filled with missed calls and messages, each one a mix of anger, confusion, and guilt. They wanted explanations, apologies, and reassurance that I would still be there to fund their lifestyle. But I didn't reply to a single one. For years, I had built their comfort, paid for their dreams, and carried their pride on my shoulders. That day, I decided I was done being their invisible foundation. I thought about everything I had done for them, the house, the cars, the education, the vacations. Every time they smiled in family pictures, I was behind the camera, paying for the smiles they wore. My father loved to brag to his friends about his investments and hard work, never admitting that the house they lived in was bought with my savings. My mother loved hosting parties, calling herself a woman of taste, not realizing that every glass she raised was a reminder of my sacrifices. I had never wanted credit, I only wanted appreciation. But when they told me I had shamed them, it became clear that no amount of giving would ever make them love me for who I was. The silence that followed was harder than I expected. I missed them, even after everything. I missed the smell of my mother's cooking, my father's morning newspaper habit, and my siblings' laughter echoing down the hallway. But those memories were mixed with something darker, the sting of betrayal. I remembered my father's words that night, his voice full of disgust as he said I had embarrassed them. It replayed in my mind over and over, until the pain turned into resolve. A week later, I received a call from my father. His voice was calm, polite even. He said they wanted to talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a cafe near their house. When I arrived, he was already there, looking older than I remembered. He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Your mother hasn't been eating," he said. "Your sister's upset." We all said things we didn't mean. I looked at him, trying to believe him, but his words felt rehearsed. Then he said, "We're family. We need each other." That sentence hit me harder than anything. Because it was true. We were family, but the truth was they only needed me when there was money involved. I asked him quietly, "Did you ever thank me for everything I did for you? For the house, for the bills, for keeping our family together?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The silence said it all. When I walked out of that cafe, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt free. I had spent my whole life earning love through money, thinking that if I gave enough, they'd finally see my worth. But love that needs receipts isn't love, it's dependency disguised as affection. So I decided to end the cycle for good. I instructed my lawyer to finalize the transfer of all properties under my control. The family house was now officially mine, but I didn't want to live there. Instead, I listed it for sale. When my parents found out, my mother called me in tears, asking how I could do such a thing. I told her the truth, because it's mine, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. She cried harder, saying I was ruining the family. But I wasn't ruining it, I was just taking back what was mine. My father didn't call. My siblings sent angry texts, calling me selfish. None of them realized I had already spent years giving selflessly. 2 months passed before I heard from them again. They had moved into a smaller house in another neighborhood. My mother occasionally sent guilt-laden messages about how hard things were. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on myself for the first time in years. I traveled, took care of my mental health, and started a new business branch. Life was quieter, but it was real. Then one evening, as I sat at a rooftop restaurant watching the sunset, I saw a family at a nearby table, parents laughing with their daughter, the kind of easy affection I had always longed for. It hurt, but it also healed me. Because I realized that what I lost wasn't family, it was an illusion. I had been clinging to a version of love that depended on what I could provide, not who I was. A few weeks later, I ran into my sister by accident at a shopping center. She looked tired and thinner than before. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she whispered, "We didn't know how much you did for us." I nodded and said, "Now you do." She asked if we could start over, but I told her that starting over didn't mean going back, it meant learning and moving forward separately. She didn't argue. She just nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away. That night, I went home and sat in the quiet of my apartment. It wasn't the same as the noise of a big house filled with people, but it was peaceful. I realized I didn't need anyone's approval anymore. I had carried everyone for so long that I had forgotten how to stand alone. But now I knew the strength that comes from solitude.